What's up, guys? So I'm here at the launch of the Lotus Evija. I keep messing that name up. Anyway, Evija is symbolic because it means first, and this is the first of many for Lotus. Basically, Lotus was acquired by the Geely group. This is the first product under that acquisition, and it is a pretty breathtaking product. It is a hypercar, and something that Lotus has never built before, a 2 million pound hypercar. And this is basically going to be creating 2,000 PS. They say it can recharge in 10 minutes, but there's a few caveats to that. Now, what's really interesting to me is the design of this car, right? And that's what I'm here for, and that's what it's all about for me, is what this car looks like from an aesthetic, from a materials perspective, and from an overall brand identity and design statement.
When we do a car like this, we try and help ourselves by setting certain aspirations and inspirations. So first of all, the goal was to make a beautiful car, which sounds an obvious thing. But sometimes when you do these sorts of vehicles, it's easy to fall into the trap of just doing something that is shocking. And we wanted this to be beautiful. It has to be contemporary. All great Lotuses, both road and track, were a brilliant blend of technical superlatives and aesthetic perfection. And it was important this car was the same. It has to have unique features, and when I walk you around the car, you'll see there's some certainly very different approaches to certain elements on the car. But at the end of it, it has to be recognisable as a Lotus, and we'll talk about some of those features which are very Lotus in a second. I think for me though, one of the things that makes it a Lotus is this blend of form and function. And I know that's a very overused term by designers, but for a Lotus that really is important. You've only got to look at some of those beautiful racing cars and road cars from the 1950s or any era, 1960s. They are a perfect blend of function and aesthetics. And that's what we wanted to capture on this. Of course, we take a lot of inspirations from our cars of the past. We've got some brilliant, iconic cars from our back catalogue. So you'll notice on this the very strong fender lines, the haunches on the car. Maybe they reflect a Type 30 or Type 40 Lotus of the past, or even indeed one of our current cars like the Exige. We also take inspiration from aerospace. Again, very overused by designers. Putting pictures of fighter planes on the wall, but when you're designing a car with extreme performance, you can take a lot of inspiration from another form of design where you have to design a form that penetrates through the air with a minimum of drag and the maximum of speed. We also take inspiration from what technology allows us to do now. Certainly doing an EV packaged car, it allowed us certain opportunities to do things differently, and certainly some of the infotainment side of the car as well. And occasionally we might even take inspiration from nature as well, and maybe we'll mention a couple of those things in there. For me though, there are three things that we always think about when we're designing, which are core Lotus values for years and years. They are philosophies that stand the test of time. We think about lightweight or weight efficiency, particularly on an EV car. We think about driving dynamics, and we think about aerodynamics. Now, in the design that we do enhances the performance in those areas. We're onto a winner. And if we can express those functions in the design as well, then we really hit the jackpot. On this car, aerodynamics was really key. And very early on, working with my colleagues in the aerodynamics department, we staked out a desire to do what they call porosity or transparency, a way of managing the airflow through the car as well as over the external surfaces. Technically what this does, it enables us to reduce drag, but visually what it does, it opens up a whole new world of sculpture, a reason for doing things differently. And for me that's really important. If you do something visual, it's nice if it has a technical reason behind it, or certainly some sort of reason. And certainly this sculpture, we called it Carved by Air, really drove the design. As with all designers, I think the first thing to look at is the proportions. It's really key on any car that you get the proportions right first of all. And for me, this is done perfectly on this car. Shrink-wrapped body over the mechanical components, the cabin hunkered down between the wheels, the haunches, the fender lines looking really muscular on the car, the car looks like it's going to be dynamic even when it's standing still. It looks like it's got a low centre of gravity. It looks like it's going to be a car that handles well, a car that's for the drivers. So I think we started with, you know, a good proportion right from the early days on this car. So if I take you around the details of the car, and we'll work front to back, and like all good movies, we start with a good opening scene and then we end up with a dramatic climax at the end. So first of all, looking into the corner of the car here, where we would normally have a traditional radiator, it's actually horizontal. And what this does, it allows an open passage here, so the air can pass into the wheel arch and be evacuated behind the wheel. This allows for the air to move very quickly through there. Fast blowing air reduces drag. The absence of the radiator also allows us the maximum surface to create aerodynamic surfaces on the car. So you see a very complex multi-element wing in here. Beautiful, but technically efficient as well. And of course, if you look deeply enough in here, you'll see the beautiful wishbones in there. So for anyone who likes sports cars, seeing these technical details is really, really important. This flavour of porosity, or as I called it, Carr by air, follows as you look towards the back of the hood, the bonnet on the car. It's completely open through here, and this allows the air to pass underneath it and be smooth before it passes over the cabin, creating a smooth dynamic airflow. The front of the car is not just all about aerodynamics though, it's also about details that mark it out as a luxury product. So you can see here the badge is a fantastic combination of carbon fibre and inlaid metal. On the concept car here, we're showing it as inlaid titanium, but it could be silver or it could be some other precious metal, whatever the customer desires. You can see the exposed carbon fibre at the front. The whole of the body is made out of carbon fibre, as is the tub, but we've shown it off in key areas just to remind people that this is real race car technology. Another smart detail on the front of the car here is the headlight. So you'll notice in here the daylight running lights and also the direction indicators. They're actually shaped like wings. So throughout the car, because of this high performance characteristic, we've taken lots of influences from aviation, and you can certainly see that there. I should have mentioned it's also carried through in that wing section at the back there. We've also got the latest technology on this in terms of functional aspects. So we've got laser lights for both main and lit beams. So that's one of the first cars to have that featured on a road car. As we start to move to the side of the car, you'll notice the emergence of the classic front haunch, the muscle on the front of the car. So that immediately conveys power to the car. But as a driver, it's really important because you can see the corners of the car. So a car that's for the drivers, it's really important that you can place it on the track. On the side of the car, you'll notice there's no traditional mirrors, and that's because for a first on a Lotus, we've replaced the mirrors with cameras which deploy out of the side here. So very much a leading edge piece of technology, but also a little bit of Lotus. Everyone remembers the Lotus with the pop-out headlights, and in this case we've got a pop-out mirror. In that same area, you'll notice in that image there, the very exposed wheel and tyre. If you're like me and you like motorsport, seeing a big fat tyre there is always a very emotional part of a car design. But of course that's not just there for aesthetic reasons, it's also there for functional reasons. It allows the air to be evacuated, keeps the air moving quickly, reduces drag, and it also takes the pressure out of the wheel arch, which would normally create lift. As we move to the side of the car, we start seeing some really elaborate sculpture. We had a lot of fun doing that. At the top of the car, you can see how the section rolls off the roof into the edge of the vehicle. A little bit like when you look at the front view of some of the fighter planes, where you see the section rolls off the canopy into the edge of the fuselage, into the chine line on the fighter plane. And then we start to see emerge the start of the big story, this huge intake on the side of the vehicle. And that's not there to feed a radiator, that's all part of the airflow management to reduce drag. That feeds what the aerodynamics guys call a 3/4 venturi. And as we move to the rear of the car, this really is, for me, is the killer view of this car. This is the jackpot. This really has everything you expect from a sports car and from a hypercar. Wide, muscular, the cabin hunkered down. It looks like a car that's going to be dynamic. But then you've got this totally unique feature of these exits from the Venturi, which, as I say, are there totally there for functional reasons. But we had a lot of fun doing that. We did it in a very sculptural way, as I called it earlier, carved by air. And some people might want to treat it as a piece of sculpture. So buried inside there, we've got a couple of LED lights on either side, so someone can relax of an evening, put the lights on and admire the back of their car. Just to rub salt into the wounds of the competitors, we've done something very different with the rear lights. We've ringed the Venturis with these ribbon lights, and from a distance they look a little bit like afterburners or reheat on a jet fighter, so a nice little playful touch on that. The Lotus name illuminated on the back, flush in there, and the T, rather cleverly, is the reverse light. So I guess a very Lotus solution there, one part doing two jobs, a badge and the reverse light. As you probably gathered from the way I've described the car, we've done a lot of work to make sure the aerodynamics are passive and aren't too intrusive, but we do have some active surfaces on the car. So we have an active rear wing, and we have an active DRS flap that optimises the performance of the diffuser. We also have here the charge flap on the car, so there's a little bit of theatre there when that's deployed as well, and you can plug the car in. Of course, this car being EV, there still needs to be a lot of emotion behind it, and the people who buy this are still going to be transfixed by the technical aspects of the design of the car. So as you walk up to the car, you'll notice when you look through the glass, you can see the top of the battery pack and the cables running off it, which has the same emotion of looking at a normal combustion engine in there. All the battery pack placed in the middle of the car, perfect weight distribution for agility and dynamics. And also, as you look through that same piece of glass, you'll see all the beautiful motorsport-derived inboard suspension, which is really a treat to look at. So as you can see from the image up there, a very different view when you look through the screen for the first time. We haven't got a traditional dashboard, it's completely open. We have a floating beam going across the car. It's very light to look at, also lets a lot of light come inside the car, so it feels a totally different driving experience when you're inside there. It's also a very Lotus solution because that beam does more than one job. It carries all the ducting for the vents, and it's also the structure that supports the steering column. So hopefully Mr. Chapman would be proud of us, one part doing two jobs there. As we look more carefully inside the interior of the car, the first thing will be apparent is that we've designed it for the drivers. So all the surfaces wrap around the occupant. They are basically making sure the driver feels like he wears the car, and that's highlighted by a light strip that runs around the interior as well. It's a very pure, minimalist interior, not raw, not like a race car, and that's something we wanted to make sure. It's still got to feel like a luxury good, but very weight efficient, very simple inside the car. Once you're inside the car, everything has been designed around the driver. So we spent a lot of time getting the package right, working with people like Gavin Kershaw from our Attribute group, who's also a championship-winning racing driver as well, to get the optimum driving position. At no point should the driver be distracted at all. Everything should be intuitive. So in front of the driver, there's just one single screen. And through that screen, we drive driving information, so obviously performance, range, etc. But also, you can plug in your phone and you can have your navigation, you can have your music and your phone as well. So everything's in front of the driver or he's looking down the road. You interact with that screen through a wheel in the centre console. So again, no eyes needed to be taken off the road, or there's some shortcut keys on the steering wheel, which as you can see is very much a motorsport-inspired steering wheel. The centre console itself is something very interesting, very elegant, slim panel. And we've got touch switches on there, but because we want that to be very intuitive, we've shaped the surface so that the driver can actually feel where the buttons will be. Gives it a very unique flavour visually, but it's also a very functional solution as well. The seats are very elegant, carbon fibre shells, thick pads on top of them. I guess in furniture terms it's a little bit like a Barcelona chair, very elegant structure underneath, thick comfortable pad on the top. And through the centre of the seat, we've got an inlaid metal strip into the carbon, which the owner can personalise with their own message. So we've got engraved on the metal strip for the drivers, but the owner could maybe put a personal family motto or something like that going through there. So a nice little touch of jewellery inside there. You can probably just gather from this image here, we talked about cameras rather than mirrors on the outside of the car. So we've got the two side cameras feed screens on the two doors. And then in the header area, where we traditionally have a normal mirror, we've got the central camera as well. So all very intuitively laid out inside there. And I think probably the final thing really on the interior is just the marvellous mix of materials we've got inside there. So you've got carbon fibre, so something very technical, machined out aluminium parts, and then you've got a lot of soft trim, and all these can be bespoke to the customer's taste. Different finishes on the metal, different soft trim, and of course the carbon fibre. So for me, quite a British approach to luxury, maybe a very Lotus approach to luxury. We're combining two facets, which this country is well known for, aerospace and motorsport technology, but also with a little bit of bespoke tailoring. On one final little detail inside the car, which is rather nice, just tucked in this area, we have one small space left that isn't full of mechanical components or airflow management. And we've tucked in there two beautifully formed carbon fibre cases. So you just push a button and it deploys the case out of that area. So a little bit James Bond, a little bit like the daggers coming out of the briefcase or the sovereigns or whatever he had in Dr. No, whichever film it was. So there we have it. You guys are obviously going to look at this in a few minutes and ask us more questions on it. But the car, I think, as a team, we're all immensely proud of. It's something which we think we've achieved the goal of making a very beautiful car and a very innovative car.
This is a very sculptural vehicle. You can tell that in the door, for example, there's a lot going on there. A whole lot going on there, but at the same time, you know, it's one of the a very ingenious bit of packaging as well. When you consider that there's the door hinge in there, there's the mirror, there's an electric mirror right there, if you can see that little opening, that little outlet. There's also this duct over here, which basically enables air to flow from out of the front wheel and over the vehicle. So it's really an exercise in aerodynamic efficiency, as well as really a symbol of things to come, so we've been told here, from Lotus. And so the Evija is the first Lotus hypercar, the first under the Geely Group ownership, and it is really quite a very innovative vehicle. So there's a lot of things that I like about it. This ribbon here around the rear, it looks like, you know, these afterburners coming out the back. It's really, really cool. And there's a lot of very efficient design taking place here. It's, like I said before, it's a packaging marvel. There's a lot of weight savings. This whole vehicle weighs 1,080 kilograms. That's without the battery pack. At the rear, we've got a pyramid style battery pack arrangement to keep weight distribution optimal. We've got this charging area right here, which basically just pops out. They say it can charge in 10 minutes, but again, that is because it's got an 800 kilowatt hour battery capable of taking that charge, but machines, or chargers rather, can only charge up to 350 kilowatts. So you can't actually charge this car in 10 minutes just yet, based on charger capability. But at the same time, I think it's a very, very nice indication of where Lotus is trying to go. Now, the whole tagline for this evening has been for the driver, and Lotus firmly believes that the driver isn't going anywhere anytime soon, and that is great. I mean, you know, perhaps there is a shelf life for that tagline, perhaps there isn't. I think there will always be room for the driver. Now, whether or not they'll be able to do that on public roads is a different story. I think there will always be room for the driver, because people ultimately really want to have control of a vehicle such as this, and that's who they're catering to, and that's who they're really trying, that's their customer base. And so they're trying to appeal to these people through a whole new customer experience program. Now you have to imagine, Lotus has been so far selling 500,000 or 50,000 to 100,000 pound cars, right? And this hypercar is the first time it has entered into this realm. And because of that, you need to really approach sales very differently, right? The whole experience of selling to the customer needs to have a different approach. So this, they have a whole new guy over from Bentley to ease that process. And they're only going to be selling 130 of them for 200 or 2 million pounds a pop. And there's been a huge interest in these vehicles. I don't doubt that they will sell them. Hopefully the people won't keep them stored in their garages just to kind of look at, but will actually get out and drive them. I think from a surfacing perspective, it's really quite nice because of the fact that it is voluptuous. It is quite technical at the same time. It needs to be, just to make sure that everything can fit over all of these functional aspects. So from a design perspective, I think it's great. Now, the interior, the doors are shut now, but it is really, really nice because it's very minimalistic. Everything from the kind of center stack, just how it flows down. It's like this free floating element that just comes off of the IP. And the IP itself is also this like free floating element in the front of the driver. It completely, like, there's space behind it type thing. So it's really very lightweight, really innovative, and very interesting as well. So I gotta say, I really like this car. There's nothing that I can say negatively about this, and I hope to bring you more information about this car in due course. Thank you.